They make projections on revenues and expenses, and they say, look, our projections show that we're gonna have a deficit in 2025. The problem with their projections are several. First, they get very pessimistic when they estimate future revenues. They get overly aggressive when they estimate future expenses. Plus, they exclude certain things. They don't include a lot, forget any of the auxiliaries that are off the book, that are in the discretely presented component units. They don't include any of the things that are on their main financial statements. They exclude anything that's not tuition and state appropriation. So the budgets are, the budget deficits that they present, and they present at the table, the budget deficits they present are full of predictions that are overly pessimistic to make things look worse, and they don't include everything that they're bringing in, and they wind up putting in there stuff they shouldn't put in, such as money to build a new building which is not operational. And so they create a picture of a future that is all gloom and doom. And they say, don't even consider what's happened in the past. The future is what looks bad. And they show numbers. I showed you all those surpluses. Your questions, what they show is the exact opposite. They're showing 24, 25, and 26 with revenues being less, what they take in being less. And I'm sorry, I think history shows us what's gonna happen in CSU. I guarantee you, when the which is why we press so hard for the 23 data, just to give one more year to show that they brought in more than they spent. And it's gonna happen again in 24, it's gonna happen in 25, no matter what they say in their deficit, in their presentations. And all they do is show deficits based on their projections of what they say is gonna happen. And they're not being, I'm not accusing them of being underhanded. I think it's natural when you're in those positions to try to make things look as bad as they possibly can. So, if you put yourself in their shoes, which is what several, the person a couple of questions ago asked, what they would say is, we're considering the worst case scenario. And worst case scenarios, well, I just don't think that's appropriate. Plus, your worst case scenarios are just way too overly pessimistic. So that's what they show is overly pessimistic future deficits that have never come to fruition.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I'm Brad Erickson from San Francisco State. So at our campus, in the last 2 years, enrollment has decreased 11.5%. The number of lecturer faculty has decreased 16% at the same time. This semester, our administration announced cutting over 300 lecturer faculty that would bring us down 44% from 2 years ago. And our president says this because she projects a 20% enrollment decrease. Is there any merit to President Lynn Mahoney's argument of needing to cut so many lecturer faculty to meet this potential enrollment decrease?
Well, there certainly is the largest, San Francisco State does have the largest enrollment decline of any of the institutions in the system. I certainly saw that. I answer this in several ways. First of all, the first thing that needs to be cut is administration. Look at your administrative structure. That's the first place it needs to be cut. All the CSUs are way redundant in the number of administrators they have at both the academic and non-academic level. There are just way too many of them. There's way too administrators making way too much money on these campuses. And it's so obvious that that's the case. Secondly, I've always found that
Can you hold this up?
at where I work, and I can't speak specifically San Francisco State, a lot of the enrollment declines are self-imposed. They're self-inflicted. They talk down the university. All they talk about in their pronouncement is how bad things are and how much we have to cut. They wind up making class sizes bigger. They offer the students fewer sections. When you cut that many lectures, And when you start doing that, all you do when that happens is you make it harder for students to get the classes, harder to graduate, and you drive students away. Students, they have options at both, and they have all sorts of other options in California, all sorts of other options everywhere. And I just think that, to me, instead of focusing so much on cut, let's focus on ways to make sure that we get our students through, enhance the student experience, and then go from there. And understanding also that the number one revenue source, the state appropriation, is increasing. So let's deal with that increase and see what we can do to, I just can't, I wouldn't cut anything while administration is at the level it's at. I mean, I just can't see how that's happening. And when you cut that many lectures, you talk about the number of lectures you cut, you know how much harder it's gonna be for this? You're creating a downward spiral. You're creating it almost intentionally, in my estimation. You can't, who's gonna teach these classes? If you cut all those lecture positions, explain to me who is actually gonna teach these classes. They're not gonna be taught. These classes are not gonna be taught. There's gonna be so many fewer, and then the classes that do exist, they're gonna be much larger. And I teach 4 different classes now, both undergrad and grad. If you go from a class of 50 to 60, or 50 to 65, or 30 to 40, or 15 to 25, we all know that makes a huge difference in the type of education we can deliver to the students. So all you are doing is making the situation worse by making those kind of cuts. That's the way I would address it. And plus, San Francisco State is sitting on, let's go back to that graph.
Please.
Is sitting on almost 200 million of unrestricted reserves. I'm not saying you use those reserves every year, but we have a bad situation in San Francisco State in terms of enrollment right now. Let's weather the storm by using those reserves in the short run, and then going forward, we'll be able to generate the cash flows we need. And they have been generating the cash flow. They need almost $100 million of extra cash flows in 2022. Where is that money? That money's sitting in reserves. This extra cash flow just goes into reserves. Well, I think now it's time to spend those reserves instead of You're intentionally creating a situation where things are going to be much worse. And I don't see. I mean, the stakes are too high here. You guys do understand how big the stakes are here. You're going to the gut. I mean, I've been on that campus several times. There is such a spirit among faculty and students there. Why are they trying to destroy it? I mean, what did they get out of that? What do you get out of making it a much smaller place? I don't understand what you get out of that. I'm not understanding the logic behind that. So, you have a lot to argue about. I think this graph is something we can use.
Thank you.